The philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer said that truth passes through 3 stages: ridicule, then violent opposition, finally acceptance as if self-evident. I believe that innovative ideas will pass through those same 3 stages. I lived this when I led a project called Orion. Orion looks at the things a delivery driver needs to do. By the way, it stands for On-Road Integrated Optimization and Navigation. It tries to figure out the best way for a delivery driver to run his or her route. It first looks at the stops that need to be served, but some things have to happen at specific times, like your errands on a weekend. You need to get to the bank before it closes. Figuring this out is much more complex than it appears, and I'd like to give you a little insight. Let's say you have 6 things to do. Let's look at this mathematically and understand what complexity means from that perspective. There's 720 ways you can do 6 things. 720 different orders to accomplish those tasks. If you have 10 things to do, the math says there's now more than 3 million ways to do that work. And if we make it 12, almost 500 million ways to do just 12 things. If this is surprising, look how many ways there are to do things as tasks increase. This is called combinatorial explosion. If you want to see combinations explode, let me show you how many ways a UPS driver can run his or her route. Look at that. It'll stop eventually, trust me. This is one driver for one day. There is no word for this number. In fact, it's so large, it might as well be infinite. And this is where the idea for Orion sprung. The thought that people, even professional drivers, can't think through these alternatives. But our scientists said that operations research and advanced mathematics could. So we started a project that would last a decade, eventually requiring 700 people to solve a problem others didn't think we had, using mathematics on this scale. I could have just worn a target on my shirt, right? So what does it take to successfully innovate? You obviously need a good idea and great people, but you do need to be in an organization that understands innovation. And fortunately for me, way back in the 1950s, our CEO said that operations research was a key to company success. Even in an organization, though, like mine, with a culture of innovation, there will be ridicule. So you better have a deep belief in your ideas and a very thick skin. I was called a pie-in-the-sky manager trying to make rocket science work, and people said we were chasing rainbows. I heard over and over, no computer can show a driver how to deliver more efficiently. And after 4 years, when the team really struggled, some colleagues thought I was committing career suicide. One day after a meeting, one of the best people I've ever worked with followed me into my office, and she shut the door behind her. She had a pained look on her face, and she didn't want to sit down, and she said, "You know, Jack, we've done a lot together over the years. I love your vision, and I love your passion, but you need to know, everyone thinks you're nuts." She said, "Maybe I need to give up on Orion." Well, for 4 years, there was research, there was trial and error, there were missteps, and of course there was criticism. And I have no secret for persisting through this stage. It might just need to be part of your DNA. I know that I don't like status quo, and for as long as I can remember, I wanted to make things better. And I don't mean incrementally better, I mean next generation better. I've spoken to lots of innovators, and they all seem to feel the same. They're drawn to these type of hard problems. If it were easy to do, someone else would have already done it, right? In those days, there were way too many evenings that I went home feeling maybe they were right. Maybe this problem was just too hard. I made a point to shelter the team from my doubt. I thought they needed to see me as a rock. In year 5, my belief in them and in Orion paid off, because it finally starts working in the lab. We now need to move from research to development, from theory to practice. We need to be a real project and have an executive sponsor. Along comes Chuck. Chuck is a vice president. He's a great engineer and a great leader, and he has a track record of supporting innovation. So I set up a meeting, and I walked him through Orion. Step by step, I explained the breakthrough science. And when I put up my thank you slide, no doubt in my mind, this man was dazzled. Chuck sat up in his chair and he looked at me. He really didn't have any emotion on his face. Then he cleared his throat. And he said, "So, are you working on anything important?" I was deflated. My heart sunk. I lost the color from my face, I'm sure. And this man, my mentor, didn't see what I did. And I assure you, I didn't sleep a wink that night. Well, we met again the next morning. We wanted to show him a prototype that we built of Orion. We went in a rental car. We rode a driver's route using the system. About an hour into the ride, Orion does something counterintuitive. It decides it's going to drive right past 3 deliveries and come back and do them later. A driver's never going to do this. See, Orion thinks differently than you and I. It doesn't think about what's the best thing to do now. It thinks about what's the best thing to do for the whole day. Orion figured out that coming back here later was going to cost a half a mile now, but the penalty of doing this work at this moment meant we were going to have a bigger problem later, like maybe not getting to the bank on time. Well, I wanted to explain to Chuck why Orion did what it did. The wheels were spinning, and I could see it on his face, and he told me to be quiet, and he gave me his hand like that. Then all of a sudden, like you see in a movie, a cartoon, a light bulb goes off over Chuck's head. And he said, "We've been wrong all along in how we taught drivers to deliver, haven't we?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "This is big, isn't it?" I said, "That's what I've been trying to tell you." Chuck becomes Orion's greatest supporter. He sets up meetings throughout the corporation with senior leaders. We demonstrate the system, and Chuck would work to get their buy-in. And you'd think with this kind of support, the chatter stops. Nope. It only gets more pointed. Now I hear, well, anybody can make this work on a small scale. You can't make it work in the real world. People would say, "This can't be real. I'm not buying the Orion Kool-Aid and then drinking it." And during one of our sessions, one of Chuck's peers said, "If you think anyone's going to like this, you're wrong. This has no real chance of success." So how do you get past this stage? Prove the skeptics wrong. We spent all of our time working on transferring our knowledge, our vision, and our passion for Orion to the field. We worked on communicating and educating. We worked on changing behavior and conversations, and we measured the impact. You know, I'm often asked, how did we sell senior leaders on taking a chance on this innovation? And I said, we didn't. Innovation's not a pet rock that needs to be sold. No one wants to be sold to, but everybody loves to buy. Give them something to buy. I remember the day we showed Orion to our most senior leaders. And a very influential man walked up to the front of the room and he studied the screen. He said, "You know, Jack, this is impressive. I'm assuming that these savings are for a 5-year period." I said, "No, that's just for 1 year." Today, Orion is seen as self-evident. When fully deployed, it's going to reduce 100 million miles driven a year. That's 10 million gallons of fuel that won't be purchased and 100,000 metric tons of CO2 that doesn't go into the atmosphere. We will reduce between $300 and $400 million of cost. I honestly still pinch myself every time I think about this. I'm often sharing our learnings with Orion with others, countless people. And they all nod their heads when I talk about the importance of teams and culture and prototypes and, of course, change management. But the thought that resonates most with them is when I talk to them about getting past the ridicule and the opposition that Schopenhauer mentions. See, at the beginning, people are going to go, "This idea is crazy, it doesn't work." When you keep going and get traction, they'll say, "Well, this is just too different," and they'll dig in their heels and they'll fight the change. When it works, they go, "This is obvious, you all weren't so smart." I tell them an innovator needs to be willing to look foolish to the crowd. This is a picture of a plaque in my office. It says, "Chaos, where brilliant dreams are born. Before the beginning of great brilliance, there must be chaos. Before a person does something great, he or she must be willing to look foolish to the crowd." And I'm proud to have played the fool. Thank you.